The next day, we left on our way to Mini Glacier for the next few nights, but we were going to stop and do a small hike at Two Medicine and take the boat ride across the lake. Wound up at Two Medicine right on time for us to have plenty of time for our little short hike before our boat ride. And as we were hiking, I started feeling not quite right. About 15 minutes into the hike, I was breathing heavily, and I had to stop again, and I told Sarah that I really was out of breath and not feeling good. And she said, you know, Mom, maybe we should just turn around and give us a little bit more time to get back so that we're not in a hurry. And we sat down to rest with some other people who were waiting for the boat. And that's all I remember.
We found a bench and sat down, and it just didn't get any better. Mom's breathing started to be a little labored, started sweating a little bit, and eventually said, I think I'm having a heart attack. I turned to a man who was sitting nearby, waiting for the same boat tour we were waiting for, and I said, could you watch my mom? Just a minute while I go get help.
As soon as we arrived, I attempted to get a set of vitals.
It was maybe just a couple more minutes when Mom lost consciousness.
Me and my partner took her from the bench, we put her on the ground. I checked for a pulse. There was no pulse, and I immediately went into compressions. My partner took a different train of thought, which was great. She immediately went to the truck, grabbed the AED and the extra equipment. I continued doing CPR until the AED told us that it was going to analyze her heart rhythm. We stopped, it analyzed her rhythm, and it said shock advised.
I was familiar with the procedure, and I focused on those details instead of focusing on the big picture.
The AED delivered 3 shocks in total, and then on the 4th one, the AED said that a shock was not advised.
It seemed like the park rangers were doing CPR for a long time, much longer than the training videos that I've watched for my own certification.
She had a pulse, she was starting to breathe on her own. The East Glacier ambulance arrived, and the paramedic from there hooked her up with an EKG. After approximately 10 minutes, Alert was on the ground, and their team was restabilizing her and preparing her for transport.
We're dispatched for going to the Sun Road, but then we're diverted to Two Medicine for the patient. Was going to be at the ranger station, and she would be in an ambulance there waiting for us.
We got a quick rundown of what happened and found out that it was more than just chest pain and that she had actually went into cardiac arrest.
On assessment, she was barely responsive, very pale, hardly breathing. She had been shocked and had CPR done by the park rangers, so I thought that a antiarrhythmic medication would be a good choice to give her, and she was having some irregular beats on the monitor. We secured her on our litter, put her in the aircraft for the transport. We had her loaded and on the way back to Kalispell. En route, her blood pressure had dropped, so we had began giving her some IV fluids, also gave her some epinephrine to get her blood pressure back up.
There was a point where my partner and I looked at each other and kind of, without saying anything, did not think that this was going to end well for her.
We landed, we did a hot offload on the pad, got her directly to the ER where she was assessed by the ER physician and staff.
Really did not look good for her prognosis, given the fact that she had collapsed in the wilderness. She had CPR She had the shocks and so far away. And it turns out that her blood pressure was okay, her pulse was okay, and even her pupils were reactive at this point, so I was hopeful that she was gonna have some neurologic recovery. We needed to go ahead and do some pictures of her head, as well as some pictures of her chest to make sure that she wasn't bleeding in her head or having another life-threatening situation such as a tearing of her aorta. As soon as we got the EKG, I knew who I needed to call.
I went to the emergency department and I evaluated the patient. Patient had an EKG that showed she was having an acute heart attack. She was on a breathing machine and she was requiring full support to maintain her blood pressure. At that time, we straight away took the patient as per the standard of care to our cardiac cath lab. I performed a heart catheterization where we found that Barbara's the main tube that supplies blood to the majority of the heart muscle was blocked, which was causing the heart attack. So I opened it up and put in a stent there, and I put Barbara on a balloon pump, which is to support the patients with cardiogenic shock. Cardiogenic shock is a condition where, especially in the setting when the patients have had out of hospital cardiac arrest, the survivability rate is in single digits.
He didn't give us any false hope, but at the same time, he exuded so much confidence that it just really put us at ease.
It appeared as time went by that Barbara's health continued to decline. So we decided to take Barbara back to the cardiac cath lab, and I removed her balloon pump and put in this larger pump called Impella, where it pumps the blood from the heart and pumps it into the body. And I also went ahead and opened up one of the other vessels that Barbara had blocked, which I was not able to do in the emergency situation the first time Barbara came to the cardiac cath lab. With the help of this pump and intervention, she was able to slowly be weaned off the blood pressure medicines, and her condition started to get better. Her organ system started to recover.
I heard someone calling my name, and I opened my eyes. She said, "You've had a heart attack, but you're going to be okay." It was when he told me that 3 out of 4 people who have this type of heart attack don't survive, that it was really impactful to me about how serious this had been. And then when he said, of the 1 in 4 who live, only 1 in 10 walk out of the hospital, I, again, was struck by how fortunate I was, and how lucky I was, and how grateful I was. Leon and Dan came to visit me. When they came back to the hospital and found out that I had lived, they didn't believe it. I remember Leon telling me that I had missed the best view of Glacier National Park that anybody could ever have. The park and the hospital worked perfectly together, that the park rangers called for the helicopter immediately, and everything just happened like it was pre-programmed, everybody being just one beat ahead of where they needed to be, so that it was completely seamless.
You know, it definitely made a big difference for her outcome, having everything fall into place and having the shorter transport with the helicopter.
It's incredible to have alert there to transport patients rapidly. Patients are generally so remote.
So, I know how lucky I am. I really do.